The next thing we need to be able to do with our application is to add new titles to the Video Shop stock. We do this using the add title script, and this performs a number of related functions. One is to add the new title to the database. Then we have to find the ID of the film we just added. The reason we need to do this is that when we add the new title, we don't include a number for the ID, we allow MySQL to set the number. So we need to run a quick search and find the ID of the film we've just added so that we can create copies of the film using the film ID to create a relationship between those two tables. We need to search to see whether any of the artists that are being included within the details of the new title are already on the database. If not, we need to create a new artist. In either case, we need to connect the artist, whether new or existing, with the film that we've just added. We also need to get a list of genres for the drop-down menu that is included within this particular part of our application. Let's take a look at the process whereby we add a new title to the database. Our SQL query is actually a relatively simple one. It's a simple insert statement that inserts into the films table title, the particular genre, the rating, charge. By the charge we mean whether it's a new release or whether it's a standard, and also the year released. Next we need to trace the ID of the film we just added. The way that I've implemented this is to select the ID from the films and order by the modified column in a descending order, limit 1. Now the modified column is not something that we included within the original database specification. I deliberately left it out even though I later thought of it and added it to the SQL, and it's a column that you'll see on the source and the CD, but I left it out earlier when we were discussing the database in order to show the process by which the database remains essentially fluid and changeable as we develop our application and we see different needs that we need to incorporate within our database. In this case, I added a timestamp column, which is called modified, to the films table. This timestamp column, as we saw in an earlier chapter, automatically updates to the current date and time whenever we make a change to that table. So the most recently modified title in the films table, given that we've just added the new title to the database, has to be the title that we've just added. So I've made that change to the database design. As I just mentioned, the change has been reflected within the SQL source for the database structure. Next we need to create some copies of the film, and this particular query has to be run twice if we have both DVD and VHS copies. When I say twice, I should say it has to be looped twice. Looped once for VHS, looped once for DVD, and the number of times that it loops in each case will be the number of VHS copies and DVD copies that we've just added to the shelves. Then we need to find the existing artist, if that artist exists, as we try and when we're going to add artists that are connected with the production of the film. This could be actors, directors, and so on. So the query is very simple. We're just running a search on the artist table to see if that particular name already is in the database. If it's not, we need to create a new artist. We simply insert into the artist table the name, and then we run a simple select query to find the ID that has just been automatically generated by the auto-incrementing primary key film field ID. Whether we've found an existing artist or created a new one, the next step is to make the relationship between the artist and the film. We do this using the film artist table, and we use the ID from the film that we found earlier on in this particular query, and we use the artist ID that we found either in this query or in the second one of this query. And we also include the job. If you remember, the job column is an enumerated column with a certain small selection of values. I believe it's actor, director or writer. So using this query we connect the artist that we've included within our HTML form with the film that we've just added to the database. Finally, another very simple query is needed within this script that I've just added for the sake of completeness, which is simply to select the ID and name from all the entries in the genres table. Let's take a quick look at the way this works. A lot of this discussion has been quite abstract, so let's try and add a new title here. Let's take title as June. Here's our drop down menu, and science fiction is what we're choosing. Let's say the rating is mature and the charge is a new release, and it was released in 1990. And let's say we're adding 2 copies on VHS and 1 on DVD. We're also adding an artist. I have to confess that I don't know any of the actors in June, so I'm just adding a completely fictitious one. Finally, we hit the submit button and the June title has now been added. If we pop over to our search section and try and search for June, find video, we'll see that we've successfully added 2 VHS copies and 1 DVD copy. If we look at the source code here very briefly, we'll see the way in which the choice of SQL statements that are executed by the application depends on the structure of the code. As we can see, the existing artist here is one option, whereas if the artist doesn't exist yet, then we have to use our insert query to create the artist. So it's important to realize that not all the queries that I'm listing are executed by each part of the application. There's a decision-making process that is handled by the application, and it chooses when to execute the queries. And it's also possible, indeed a good idea, to have the application build the queries depending on, for instance, user input. In our next movie, we're going to move on to another part of our application.